Before we begin tonight's story, if you're finding value in these law enforcement accounts, please subscribe to the channel and hit that like button. It helps more than you know. And I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments. Now, let's talk about New Hampshire, the White Mountains, and the thing that walks down from them when it snows. My name is Catherine Walsh, and I've been a New Hampshire State Trooper for 16 years. I've worked crashes and blizzards, pulled bodies from frozen lakes, searched for lost hikers in sub-zero temperatures. I thought I'd seen every way the mountains could kill someone. I was wrong. This story begins in November 2004. But to understand it, you need to know about February 1952. That's when the worst avalanche in New Hampshire history buried a logging camp at the base of Mount Cannon in Franconia Notch. 47 men died. Most of them never recovered. The camp was abandoned, the site marked with a memorial plaque, and the mountain went back to its silent watch over the valley. For 52 years, that's where the story ended. Then the snow people started walking. The first report came on November 18, 2004, just after the first major snowstorm of the season. I was working the night shift on I-93, the main highway through Franconia Notch. Around 2:30 a.m., I got a call from dispatch. "Trooper Walsh, we've got a motorist reporting pedestrians on the highway near mile marker 115. Says they're walking in the road, causing a hazard." "Copy that, on my way." Mile marker 115 was in the heart of the notch, surrounded by steep mountains on both sides. Nobody walked there, especially not at night in November. I figured it was drunk college kids from one of the ski resorts doing something stupid. I was there in 10 minutes. The highway was empty, no sign of pedestrians or vehicles. I radioed it in as a false alarm and was about to leave when my headlights caught something at the edge of the tree line. A figure, standing perfectly still about 20 feet from the road. I grabbed my flashlight and got out, the November cold hitting me like a slap. "State Police! Step out where I can see you!" The figure didn't move. As I got closer, my flashlight revealed something that made no sense. It looked like a person, roughly human-shaped, but it was made entirely of snow. Not a snowman, not someone covered in snow. It looked like someone had sculpted a person out of packed snow, life-sized and detailed enough that I could see the suggestion of a face, arms, legs. "What the hell?" I muttered, circling it with my flashlight. That's when I noticed the tracks. Human footprints in the snow, leading from deeper in the woods, stopping right where this snow figure stood. But there were no tracks leading away, just this thing, standing where someone had been walking. I radioed dispatch. "Yeah, I found something weird here. Some kind of snow sculpture on the side of the highway. No sign of who made it." "Copy that. Need anything else?" "Negative. Probably just kids messing around." But as I walked back to my cruiser, I looked back. The snow figure was gone. Just empty space where it had been standing, and a small pile of snow on the ground. I told myself the wind had knocked it over. That's what wind does to loose snow, right? 3 nights later, November 21st, I got another call. Same location, different caller. Pedestrians on I-93 walking in the southbound lane near mile marker 115. This time, when I arrived, I saw them. 3 figures walking single file down the highway, moving at a steady pace despite the fresh snow falling. I hit my lights and siren, pulled up behind them. They didn't stop, didn't even turn around, just kept walking. I got on the loudspeaker. "This is State Police. Stop walking and move to the shoulder immediately." Nothing. They kept walking, their pace never changing. I pulled alongside them and finally got a good look. My blood went cold. They weren't people. They were the same thing I'd seen 3 nights ago, figures made of snow. But these were moving, walking, their legs articulating like real legs, their arms swinging at their sides. Where their faces should have been, there were just smooth surfaces of packed snow with indentations that suggested eye sockets and mouths. I grabbed my radio with shaking hands. "Dispatch, I need backup at mile marker 115. I don't know what I've got. 3 pedestrians, but something's wrong with them." "What kind of wrong, Walsh?" "Just send backup, now." I kept pace with them, watching through my window. They weren't leaving footprints. The snow falling around them seemed to add to their mass, making them slightly larger as they walked, and they were heading south down the mountain toward the towns in the valley below. Trooper James Morrison arrived 15 minutes later. By then, the snow figures had stopped in the middle of the road, standing perfectly still like they were waiting for something. "What am I looking at, Kate?" Morrison asked, his flashlight beam playing over the 3 figures. "I have no idea. They were walking. I saw them walking. They're snowmen. Snowmen don't walk, Jim." We approached them carefully, but the moment we got within 10 feet, they collapsed, just fell apart into piles of snow, like someone had kicked them over. We searched the area, but there was nothing. No footprints, no evidence anyone had built them. Nothing. Morrison looked at me with concern. "You feeling okay, Kate? Getting enough sleep?" "I know what I saw." They were walking. "Kate, it's late November in the mountains. It's dark, it's snowing, visibility is shit. You saw some snow formations, your mind filled in the details. Happens all the time. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was seeing things. I filed the report as debris and roadway removed, and tried to forget about it. But I couldn't, because they came back. November 24th, Thanksgiving. I volunteered for the holiday shift because I didn't have family nearby. The highway was quiet. Most people were home with their families. Around 11 p.m., just as I was thinking about getting coffee, my dash cam picked up movement ahead. 6 figures walking down I-93, moving south toward Manchester and the more populated areas of the state. I radioed it in, but this time I recorded everything on my personal phone. I had to document this. I had to prove I wasn't losing my mind. As I got closer, I could see them more clearly in my headlights. They looked more detailed this time, more refined. I could see the suggestion of clothing in their snow bodies: coats, hats, work boots. They looked like laborers from another era, trudging down a highway that hadn't existed when they were alive. I pulled up alongside them and rolled down my window. The temperature in my car plummeted immediately, my breath fogging in the suddenly frigid air. "Stop!" I called out. "State Police!" One of them turned its head toward me. The movement was slow, mechanical, like it was learning how to move. Where its face should have been, 2 dark hollows stared at me. Not empty, but filled with something that absorbed light. In the snow that formed its mouth, I saw movement, like it was trying to speak. Then it raised its arm and pointed. South, toward the valley. All 6 of them stopped walking and turned to face south, pointing in perfect unison. Then they started walking again, faster this time. I called for backup, but by the time 2 other units arrived, the snow people had reached the tree line and vanished into the forest. We found the spot where they'd left the highway. There were no footprints, but the snow was disturbed, like something heavy had pushed through it. Trooper Morrison was there again, along with the Sergeant Barbara Chen. They both looked at the evidence I'd recorded on my phone. "What is this?" Chen asked, her voice carefully neutral. "I don't know, Sergeant." But this is the 3rd time I've encountered them, and they're heading toward populated areas. Morrison looked uncomfortable. "Kate, I don't want to be that guy, but have you considered talking to someone? This job, the isolation, the long nights, it gets to people. I have video evidence." Chen held up her hand. "You have video of what looks like snow formations on the highway. The movement could be explained by wind, camera shake, lots of things. Jim's right. Maybe you need to take a few days off, get some rest. They didn't believe me, and I couldn't blame them. If someone had told me they'd seen people made of snow walking down the highway, I would have questioned their sanity too. But I knew what I'd seen, and I knew they were real. I started researching. Spent my off days at the New Hampshire Historical Society in Concord, digging through old newspapers and records. That's when I found the details about the 1952 avalanche. The logging camp had been operating illegally, cutting timber in an area known to be avalanche-prone. The camp boss had ignored weather warnings, forced his men to work despite heavy snowfall. When the mountain finally let go, the wall of snow had come down so fast that most of the men never had a chance to run. The recovery effort had been hampered by continued snowfall in the remote location. Only 13 bodies were ever found. The rest, 34 men, were still up there, buried somewhere under millions of tons of snow and rock. I found something else, too. In the weeks after the avalanche, there had been reports of strange occurrences in Franconia Notch. Hikers seeing figures in the snow, drivers reporting pedestrians on the old road through the notch. All dismissed as grief-induced hallucinations, people seeing what they wanted to see. The reports had continued sporadically for about 6 months, then stopped, until now, 52 years later. I needed to understand why they were coming back. Why now, after all this time? And why were they walking south toward civilization? The answer came on December 3rd, during the second major storm of the season. I was off duty, but I drove to Franconia Notch anyway. I needed to see the memorial to understand what was happening. The Avalanche Memorial was a simple granite plaque near the base of Mount Cannon, listing the names of the confirmed dead. Snow had already covered most of it, but I brushed it away and read the names. 47 men, most of them young, all of them dying in an instant because someone had valued profit over safety. "I'm sorry," I said to the empty forest. "I'm sorry no one could save you." That's when I heard it. A sound like wind, but rhythmic, purposeful. I turned and saw them emerging from the tree line. Not 6 this time. Dozens of them. Maybe 50 or more, all made of snow, all walking in formation down the mountain. They passed within 20 feet of me, and I stood frozen, unable to move or speak. Up close, I could see details I'd missed before. Some of them were missing limbs, arms torn away, legs shattered. Some had their heads caved in, their bodies crushed. They were showing their wounds, the injuries that had killed them when the mountain came down. They walked past the memorial without stopping, heading for the highway. I followed them, staying back, documenting everything on my phone. When they reached I-93, they didn't cross immediately. They stopped at the shoulder and stood there, dozens of snow figures lined up along the highway, all facing south. Then, as one, they stepped onto the road and started walking. I called it in. "Dispatch, this is Walsh. I need every available unit at mile marker 114 on I-93. We need to close the highway, now." "What's the situation, Walsh?" "Major hazard on the highway. Multiple obstructions. I need backup immediately." Within 20 minutes, we had 5 units on scene. The other troopers arrived to find me standing in the middle of I-93 with dozens of snow figures walking past me, heading south. This time, everyone saw them. This time, it wasn't just me. Sergeant Chen got out of her cruiser slowly, her face pale. "Walsh, what are we looking at?" "The 1952 avalanche victims," I said. "They're coming down from the mountain." Morrison was on his radio, calling for more backup, trying to explain the situation to dispatch. Other troopers were trying to stop the snow people, but the moment they touched them, The figures collapsed into harmless piles of snow. Then, seconds later, they reformed and continued walking. "They can't be stopped," I said. "They're not really here. Or they are, but not in a way we can interact with." Chen looked at me. "Where are they going?" "South, toward Manchester, toward people." We followed them for 7 miles before they finally stopped at mile marker 121, near the town of Lincoln. There, they turned east and walked into the woods, disappearing one by one into the darkness. We spent the rest of the night searching the area but found nothing. The snow people were gone, leaving only normal snow and confused troopers wondering what they'd witnessed. The story made local news, though it was downplayed as unusual weather phenomenon and possible mass hallucination from carbon monoxide in patrol vehicles. But those of us who were there knew the truth. The dead of 1952 were walking again, and they were heading somewhere specific. Over the next week, reports came in from all over the White Mountains. Snow figures seen walking on highways, trails, even through towns. Always heading south, always during or after snowstorms. Always made of snow, but moving like they were alive. The media picked it up. Snow people became a viral story, with tourists coming to New Hampshire hoping to see them. Most saw nothing. But on December 10th, during the third major storm, they appeared again. This time, there were hundreds of them. I was on patrol when I saw them coming down from the mountains, an army of snow figures walking in silent formation. They followed I-93 south through the Notch, past Lincoln, past Plymouth, heading toward the more populated southern part of the state. And this time, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. They were getting more detailed, more refined. The newest ones looked almost human, with distinct facial features carved in snow, their movements fluid and natural. They were learning, evolving, getting better at existing in our world. I followed them for 30 miles before they stopped at the Manchester city limits. There, they stood at the edge of the highway, dozens of snow figures lined up like soldiers, all facing the city. They stood there for 3 hours, not moving, just watching. Then, when the sun started to rise, they collapsed into snow and blew away in the wind. But I knew they'd be back. Each storm brought more of them, walking farther, staying longer, getting closer to their goal, whatever that goal was. The authorities tried to keep it quiet, but you can't hide something like this. Videos were everywhere online. Scientists came to study them, but they could never catch one intact. Religious groups declared it a miracle, or a curse, or the end times. I just kept patrolling, watching, trying to understand. On December 18th, I finally figured it out. I was at the Historical Society again, going through old newspapers when I found an article from March 1952, a month after the avalanche. Logging company declares bankruptcy. Families of avalanche victims receive no compensation. The logging company had folded immediately after the disaster, its owner skipping town before he could be held liable. The families of the dead men, many of them immigrants with no legal recourse, had received nothing. No compensation, no justice, no accountability. 34 men still buried in the mountain. 47 families destroyed by corporate greed, and no one had ever paid for it. That's why they were walking. They wanted justice, they wanted recognition, they wanted someone to acknowledge what had been done to them. And they were walking to Manchester because that's where the logging company had been headquartered. The building was still there, now housing a local bank. I knew what I had to do. On December 20th, the next time the snow people appeared, I didn't try to stop them. Instead, I drove ahead to Manchester to the old logging company building, and I waited. They arrived at dawn, hundreds of them, filling the street in front of the building. They stood there in silence, snow figures with hollow eyes, waiting. I stepped forward, my voice shaking. I see you. We all see you. You're not forgotten. What happened to you was wrong. You deserved better. The snow figure at the front of the group raised its arm and pointed. Not at me, not at the building. It pointed up toward the mountains. Then, one by one, they turned and started walking north. Back toward the mountains, back toward home. It took them 3 days to make the journey. I followed them the whole way, along with dozens of other troopers, reporters, and curious citizens. They walked through towns, across highways, through forests, retracing their path back to Franconia Notch. On December 23rd, they reached the Avalanche Memorial. All of them, hundreds of snow figures representing not just the 47 confirmed dead, but everyone who'd ever died in those mountains, stood in a circle around the memorial. Then, they collapsed. All at once, they fell apart into ordinary snow, covering the memorial in a fresh white blanket. And they didn't come back. I stood there in the falling snow, watching the empty space where they'd been, and I understood. They hadn't been seeking revenge or trying to harm anyone. They'd just wanted to be remembered, to have someone acknowledge that they'd lived, that they'd died, that it had mattered. The state put up a new memorial, larger and more detailed, listing all the names and telling the full story of the 1952 avalanche and the injustice that followed. Families came forward with stories and photos. The victims finally got the recognition they deserved. That was 16 years ago. I'm still a trooper, still patrolling the White Mountains. Every winter, when the first snow falls, I drive to Franconia Notch and stand by the memorial, just to remember, just to make sure they know they're not forgotten. I never saw the snow people again. But sometimes, on the coldest nights, when the snow is falling heavy and the mountains are wrapped in silence, I see footprints in the snow, leading from the avalanche site, walking a little way down the mountain, then stopping, like they're checking, making sure we still remember. And we do. We always will. What I told you before was the official story, the one that made the news, the one that satisfied the public, the one that let everyone sleep at night. But it wasn't the whole truth. The snow people didn't stop coming after December 23rd, 2004. They just changed their pattern. It started again in January 2005, about 3 weeks after the memorial service. I was on patrol near Mount Washington, the deadliest small mountain in America, when I got a call from a frightened hiker. "There's something wrong with the snow," he said, his voice shaking. "It's moving. It's forming shapes. You need to send someone up here." I arrived at Pinkham Notch to find a group of winter hikers gathered in the parking lot, all pointing up at the mountain. Even from that distance, I could see them. Dark figures against the white snow, dozens of them, standing in formation along the tree line. Through binoculars, I confirmed what I'd feared. The snow people were back, but these ones weren't walking. They were just standing there, perfectly still, arranged in precise rows like soldiers on a battlefield. I called it in, but this time the response was different. Within hours, I had State Police Command on scene, along with representatives from the Department of Safety and, surprisingly, the National Guard. Major Dennis Cooper from the Guard pulled me aside. "Trooper Walsh, I need you to tell me everything you know about these formations. Everything, not the sanitized version you gave the press." I hesitated. "Sir, with respect, why is the National Guard involved in a local phenomenon?" "Because it's not local anymore. We've had reports from Vermont, Maine, and upstate New York. Snow formations appearing during storms, standing in military formations, always near sites of historical deaths. Avalanches, logging accidents, mining disasters, They're appearing everywhere. The scale of it hit me like a physical blow. How many? Thousands, maybe tens of thousands, and they're all doing the same thing, standing watch like they're waiting for something. Over the next week, I became part of a task force studying the snow people. We documented everything, their patterns, their locations, their behavior. What we discovered was both fascinating and terrifying. The snow people weren't random. Each formation corresponded to a specific historical tragedy. The Franconia Notch Formation represented the 1952 avalanche victims. The formations on Mount Washington represented the over 150 people who'd died on that mountain over the years. Other formations represented everything from colonial-era settler deaths to industrial accidents, and they were all connected somehow. When one formation moved, the others responded. They were communicating, coordinating. Dr. Patricia Vance, a physicist from MIT who joined the task force, had a theory. They're not ghosts in the traditional sense. They're more like impressions. Traumatic events leave marks on reality, and under certain conditions, specific temperature, humidity, barometric pressure, those marks can manifest physically. The snow is just the medium they're using. So they're real? I asked. They're as real as anything else. They have mass, they affect the physical world. They can be measured and observed. But they're not alive in any biological sense. They're echoes, resonances, memories made solid. Then why are they waiting? What are they preparing for? Dr. Vance didn't have an answer to that. None of us did. On January 15th, during a massive nor'easter that shut down most of New England, something changed. I was monitoring the formations near Franconia Notch when they all started moving at once. Not south toward civilization this time, but north, deeper into the mountains, toward the highest peaks. I followed them in my snowmobile, along with several other officers. The snow was coming down so hard we could barely see, but we kept the formations in sight. They moved with purpose, climbing trails that would be deadly for humans in these conditions, heading upward through the storm. They led us to the summit of Mount Lafayette, one of the highest peaks in the Whites. There, sheltered in the lee of the summit cairn, we found something impossible. A structure, made entirely of snow and ice, but clearly artificial. It looked like a cross between an igloo and a cathedral, with walls 10 feet thick and an arched entrance facing south. Inside, the temperature was somehow warmer than outside, hovering just below freezing instead of the -20 it should have been. The snow people had built this, carved it out of the mountain itself. "What is this?" Major Cooper breathed, his flashlight playing across ice walls carved with intricate patterns. Dr. Vance was already taking measurements, her scientific instruments beeping in the cold. It's a focal point, a place where the veil between past and present is thinnest. They're not just memories anymore. They're trying to become real. How is that possible? I don't know, but look at these carvings. She pointed to the walls. In the ice, preserved like fossils, were images, scenes from the past, moments of death captured in frozen water. I saw the avalanche of 1952, the wall of snow crashing down. I saw men freezing on Mount Washington's summit. I saw industrial accidents, house fires, drownings in mountain lakes. All the ways people had died in these mountains, recorded in ice like a gallery of tragedy. "They're remembering," Dr. Vance said softly. "All of them together. Pooling their memories, their identities, their pain. They're becoming something larger than individual deaths. Becoming what?" Before she could answer, the walls began to glow. A pale blue light emanated from deep within the ice, pulsing like a heartbeat. The temperature dropped suddenly, and our breath crystallized in the air. Outside, we could hear a sound like wind, but rhythmic, purposeful. The snow people were gathering, all of them, from all over the mountains, converging on this summit. "We need to leave," Cooper said. "Now." But it was too late. The entrance sealed behind us, ice forming over the opening so fast we couldn't stop it. We were trapped inside the structure as hundreds of snow people surrounded it outside. For 3 hours, we huddled in that ice cathedral while the storm raged outside and the snow people stood guard. Dr. Vance kept taking measurements, documenting everything with shaking hands. Cooper tried to radio for help, but our signals couldn't penetrate the ice walls. I just watched the carvings, seeing all those deaths play out in silent loops, and I finally understood what was happening. The snow people weren't trying to harm us. They were trying to show us something, to make us understand what the mountains had taken, what had been lost and forgotten over centuries of human presence in these harsh lands. When the storm finally broke and the ice entrance melted open, we emerged to find the summit empty. The snow people were gone, but they'd left something behind. Carved into the snow in letters 10 feet high, visible for miles, were words. "We were here. We mattered. Remember us." The media called it a hoax, said someone had used snow carving equipment to create the message. But we knew the truth. The dead were speaking, using snow as their voice, demanding to be acknowledged. The task force was dissolved the next day. Too many uncomfortable questions, too much that couldn't be explained. We were told to stop investigating, to let it go, to focus on our regular duties. But I couldn't let it go, because I'd seen something else in that ice cathedral, something I hadn't told anyone about. In one of the carvings, clear as day, I'd seen my own face, a scene that hadn't happened yet, showing me in a patrol car, surrounded by snow people, their hands pressed against the windows. It was a warning, or a promise. Something was coming, and I was going to be at the center of it. Over the next month, the snow people appeared more frequently but stayed in the mountains. Hikers reported seeing them standing watch on peaks, materializing during storms, always in groups, always facing different directions, like sentries. On February 12th, I returned to the ice cathedral alone. It was still there, though smaller now, melting slowly in the February sun. I went inside and stood among the carvings, looking for the one that showed my face. I found it on the north wall, but it had changed. Now there were 2 of me in the image, one inside a patrol car, one standing outside in the snow, transformed. Half human, half snow, caught between 2 states of existence. "No," I whispered, "that's not going to happen." A voice behind me, soft as falling snow. "It already has." I spun around. A snow person stood in the entrance, but this one was different. More detailed, more refined. It had a face I recognized, my own face, carved in snow. "We're not separate from you anymore," it said in my voice. "Every time you come to the mountains, every time you stand in the snow and remember the dead, you become part of us. Everyone who witnesses us, who believes in us, who acknowledges us. They join us, not in death but in purpose. What purpose? To remember, to make sure no death is forgotten, no tragedy erased by time. You're a witness, Catherine Walsh, and witnesses become part of the testimony." The figure stepped closer and I could see myself in its features. Not just my face, but my expressions, my mannerisms, everything that made me who I was, reflected in snow and ice. "You're trying to replace me." "No. We're trying to preserve you. When you die, and everyone dies, you'll become part of the mountains, part of the eternal witness. Your memories, your experiences, your dedication to justice and truth. All of it will remain carved in snow, told in storms, remembered forever." I backed away, but there was nowhere to go. The walls of ice surrounded me, reflecting my face 1,000 times. "I don't want that. I want to live my life, grow old, retire. I don't want to be a ghost made of snow. You won't be a ghost. You'll be something more, something that matters beyond your brief lifespan. Think of all the people you've helped, all the cases you've solved, all the truth you've uncovered. Wouldn't you want that to continue forever? It was seductive in a way, the promise of immortality, of purpose without end. But it was also terrifying. To lose myself, to become just another snow person walking the mountains for eternity. I choose my own path, I said firmly, and I choose to stay human. The snow figure tilted its head, studying me. Then prove it. When the time comes, when the choice is offered, prove that you're strong enough to remain yourself. We'll be watching. It collapsed into snow, leaving me alone in the ice cathedral. I left the mountains that day and didn't come back for 2 weeks. I took vacation time, visited my sister in Boston, tried to pretend everything was normal, but I couldn't stop thinking about what the snow person had said, about choice, about purpose, about what happens when we die. On March 1st, I returned to duty. Winter was ending, the snow melting, temperatures rising. The season of the snow people was coming to a close, but on my first patrol back, I found them one more time. Not walking, not standing guard. They were gathered in a valley near Franconia Notch, hundreds of them, arranged in a perfect spiral pattern. At the center of the spiral stood one figure, taller than the rest, more detailed. It had no face, just a smooth surface of snow, but I could feel it watching me. I walked toward it, snow crunching under my boots. When I reached the center of the spiral, the figure spoke without moving. The season ends. We return to sleep until the snow comes again, but we wanted you to know, the choice is real. When your time comes, you can join us, or you can rest. The decision is yours alone. How will I know when it's time? You'll know. And Catherine, thank you for seeing us, for believing, for caring enough to understand. The spiral began to collapse, each figure falling into snow, working from the outside in. When only the central figure remained, it raised one arm in salute, then dissolved like all the others. I stood alone in a field of fresh snow, the mountains silent around me, and I made a decision. If the time ever came, if I was ever offered the choice to become a snow person, I would refuse. I would hold on to my humanity, my mortality, my right to end when my time was done. But I would also remember them, all of them, the dead of the mountains, the voices in the snow, the witnesses carved in ice, because that's what they needed most. Not to return, not to haunt, but simply to be remembered, and I would make sure no one ever forgot. 10 years passed, 10 winters of watching for them, 10 springs of relief when they didn't return. The snow people had become local legend, a story people told but didn't quite believe. Even I started to wonder if it had all been real. Then came the winter of 2015. I was 42 years old, a sergeant now, training new troopers who'd never seen the snow people and half believed I'd made them up. The world had changed. Smartphones everywhere, social media, everyone documenting everything. If the snow people returned, we'd have proof this time, real, undeniable evidence. The first storm of the season came early, in October. I was leading a training exercise near Crawford Notch when one of my rookies, Trooper Daniel Kim, called out, "Sergeant Walsh, you need to see this." He was standing at the edge of a clearing, staring at the tree line. I joined him and felt my stomach drop. They were back, but they were different now. More refined, more detailed, more human. These snow people had distinct faces, clothing, expressions. One looked like an old man, another like a young woman. I could see the individual fingers on their hands, The texture of fabric in their clothes, even the suggestion of hair. "Are those?" Kim started. "Snow people." "Yes. Don't approach them, just observe." There were 12 of them standing in a semicircle, all facing us. The one in the center, an older man in a 1950s work coat, raised his hand slowly, deliberately, and pointed. Not at us, not at the mountains. He pointed at me specifically. "Sergeant, why is it pointing at you?" I don't know. But I did know. Deep down, I knew. They'd come back for me. Over the next week, reports flooded in from across New Hampshire. Snow people appearing everywhere, but with a new behavior. They weren't walking anymore. They were standing guard at specific locations, trailheads, overlooks, accident sites, and they were all pointing at something. A task force was assembled again, this time with me as the primary consultant. Dr. Vance, now in her 60s but still sharp, came out of retirement to study them. "They've evolved," she said, examining photos from multiple locations. "These aren't simple formations anymore. These are conscious constructs with individual identities. Look at the detail. That's not random ice crystallization, that's deliberate creation." "But what do they want?" Major Cooper, now a colonel, asked. "They're pointing at witnesses. People who saw them before, people who believed in them. Catherine isn't the only one being marked. We have 17 other individuals across New England being specifically indicated by snow formations." I met with the other marked individuals. A park ranger from Vermont who'd documented snow people in 2004. A journalist from Maine who'd written sympathetically about them. A professor from New Hampshire who'd studied the historical tragedies that spawned them. All of us shared one thing. We'd believed. We'd taken them seriously when everyone else dismissed them as hoaxes or hallucinations. "They're recruiting," the professor said during one meeting, "building a network of witnesses who will help preserve their memory." "Or they're targeting us for something else," the ranger countered. "My formation has been following me, it appears, wherever I go. Yesterday, it was in my backyard. That night, I drove home to find one standing in my driveway. It looked exactly like me. Same height, same build, same face carved in perfect detail. It was wearing a snow version of my uniform, complete with badge and nameplate. I got out of my car slowly. 'What do you want?' It didn't speak. Instead, it walked toward my house, moved right through the wall like it wasn't there, and vanished inside. I ran in, searching every room, but found nothing. No snow, no water, no trace it had ever been there. Except in my bedroom mirror, for just a moment, I saw two reflections, mine and one made of snow. The next morning, I found frost patterns on my bedroom window. They formed words. Winter equinox, Mount Washington, come alone. The winter equinox was 3 weeks away. December 21st, the longest night of the year. I told the task force about the message, and they immediately wanted to set up surveillance, bring in a team. But I knew that wouldn't work. The snow people wanted me alone. If I brought others, they wouldn't show. "It could be a trap," Colonel Cooper warned. "For what? They're made of snow. What are they going to do, freeze me to death?" Dr. Vance looked worried. "Catherine, we don't know what they've become. 10 years of evolution, of growing stronger. They might be capable of things we can't predict. That's why I have to go. To find out what they want, what they're planning, and if they're a threat, I need to know before the next winter." On December 21st, I drove to Mount Washington. The mountain was closed for the season, the auto road shut down, the weather observatory the only human presence on the summit. I hiked up the Tuckerman Ravine Trail, the same route that had killed dozens over the years. The snow was deep, the wind brutal, the temperature well below zero. Perfect conditions for snow people to manifest. I reached the summit at 3 p.m., just as the sun was setting. The observatory building was dark. The crew had been evacuated earlier due to incoming weather. I was truly alone on the deadliest small mountain in America. That's when I saw them. Thousands of them. Snow people covering the entire summit, arranged in concentric circles around the highest point. Not just from New Hampshire, but from every mountain, every tragedy, every death in the Northeast. All gathered here on this mountain on this night. At the center of the formation stood the tall figure I'd seen years before. The one with no face. It was even larger now, maybe 10 feet tall, and as I approached, it began to speak. "Catherine Walsh, you came. I was invited. What do you want?" "To offer you a choice, the same choice we offered 10 years ago, but now you understand what it truly means." The circles of snow people began to glow with that same blue light I'd seen in the ice cathedral. The temperature dropped even further, and I could feel frost forming on my eyebrows, my lips. "You've spent 16 years witnessing the dead," the figure continued. "Documenting, remembering, honoring. You understand better than anyone that death should not mean forgetting. We want to preserve that. We want to make you eternal. By turning me into one of you, by making you our voice, our representative. You would remain human, remain alive, but carry our testimony. When you speak, you would speak for all the forgotten dead. When you remember, you would remember for everyone who has no one left to remember them." It sounded noble, important, but there was something underneath, something darker. "What's the cost?" "You would never be alone again. We would always be with you in every reflection, every shadow, every moment. You would see us constantly, hear our voices, feel our presence. Some call it a gift. Others call it madness. That's why you're asking permission. You can't do this without my consent." "Correct. We can make formations. We can manifest, we can point and guide. But we cannot enter a living person without their willing participation. So we ask, will you be our voice?" I looked at the thousands of snow people surrounding me, all the forgotten dead of these mountains, and I felt the weight of their need. They wanted so desperately to matter, to be acknowledged, to have their deaths mean something. But I also thought about my life, my sister, her kids, my friends, my career. All the normal human things I'd miss if I said yes. I need time to think. The offer expires at midnight. After that, we return to dormancy for another cycle. If you refuse, we will find another witness. Someone else who believes, who cares, who might say yes where you said no. And if I accept, then you become eternal. Part human, part witness, part memory. You would never truly die, Catherine Walsh. Your body would age and eventually fail, but your consciousness would remain, preserved in snow and ice, speaking for the dead until the mountains themselves crumble. Thunder rumbled overhead. Impossible in winter, but nothing was impossible anymore. The aurora borealis appeared in the sky, green and purple lights dancing over the summit. Reality was bending around this moment, this choice. I had 3 hours until midnight. I spent them walking among the snow people, looking at their faces, reading their stories in the ice that formed their bodies. Each one was a person who'd died in these mountains. Some I recognized from historical records. Others were lost to history, remembered now only in frozen water. I found the 1952 avalanche victims, still standing together as a group. The loggers who'd died because of someone else's greed. Their faces were so detailed now I could see their individual features, their ages, their expressions of fear frozen for eternity. I found the Mount Washington casualties, the hikers who'd underestimated the mountain, the workers who'd fallen, the researchers who'd frozen in storms, all standing together, united in death. And I found one formation that made me stop cold. It was me, a snow sculpture of me, but older, wearing a version of my uniform I'd never seen. The name tag still said Walsh, but the rank was different, Chief. And the expression on its face was one of wisdom, of acceptance, of peace. Is this what I become if I say yes? I asked the faceless figure which had followed me silently. One possible version. The timeline is flexible. But yes, if you accept, you would eventually rise to Chief of Police, would serve another 30 years, would die at age 72, surrounded by family. And then you would join us, would become one of the voices in the snow, helping to guide the next generation of witnesses. And if I say no, then you retire in 5 years, move to Florida, live until 83, die of natural causes surrounded by strangers in a nursing home. You would be forgotten within a generation. Your name would appear in no history books. Your sacrifice and service would be a footnote in department records. It was manipulative, I knew, showing me the noble path versus the lonely one. But I couldn't deny the appeal of mattering, of being remembered, of my life having significance beyond the handful of people who currently knew my name. There has to be another option. There is. You could walk away from all of this. Leave New Hampshire, change careers, pretend the snow people never existed. Live a normal life, free from the burden of witnessing. Some choose that path, but someone else would have to take my place. Yes, and they might not be as strong as you, might not be able to bear the weight of all these memories, might break under the strain and become something twisted, using our power for their own purposes. It was blackmail, essentially. Accept the burden or risk someone weaker taking it on. I looked at my watch. 11:45 p.m. 15 minutes to decide. I thought about why I'd become a trooper in the first place. To help people, to serve, to make sure that when bad things happened, someone was there to respond, to document, to bear witness. The snow people were asking me to do the same thing I'd always done, just on a larger scale, for a longer time, with higher stakes. If I accept, I said slowly, I want conditions. The faceless figure tilted its head, waiting. I remain human. Fully human. I don't transform. I don't become snow. I don't lose myself. I'm your voice, but I stay me. Agreed. I choose when and how to speak for you. You don't control me. Don't force me to say things I don't believe. I'm your representative, not your puppet. Agreed. And when my natural life ends, when I die at 72 or 83 or whenever, I choose whether to join you. You don't automatically claim me. I get to decide, at the end, if I want to become eternal. The figure was silent for a long moment. That is unusual. Most witnesses join us automatically upon death, but we can accept those terms. You would have final choice. I looked at my watch. 11:58 p.m. Then I accept. I'll be your voice, your witness, your representative in the world of the living. The moment I said it, everything changed. The aurora intensified, filling the entire sky with colored light. The thousands of snow people raised their arms in unison, pointing at me, and I felt something flow into me. Not possession, not control, but connection. Like a phone line opening, I could suddenly hear all of them, thousands of voices, all speaking at once, all sharing their deaths, their stories, their need to be remembered. It should have been overwhelming, should have driven me insane. But somehow my mind adapted, organize the voices into categories, into manageable streams of information. I knew how every person on this mountain had died. I knew their names, their stories, their final moments. And I knew that I could share those stories, could make sure they were never forgotten. The faceless figure approached me. "It is done. You are the voice of the snow. Go forth and speak for the dead. Let no death be forgotten, no tragedy erased. You are eternal now, Catherine Walsh. Even if your body fails, your purpose will not." The snow people began to collapse, returning to ordinary snow. Within minutes, I stood alone on the summit, the aurora fading, the normal cold of a December night settling in. But I wasn't the same. I could feel them still, a constant presence in the back of my mind, waiting, watching, ready to share their stories whenever I chose to listen. I hiked down the mountain as the sun rose on December 22nd. When I reached my car, I looked in the rearview mirror and saw my reflection. For just a moment, it flickered. Me, but with a faint blue glow in my eyes. Me, but with frost patterns on my skin that vanished when I blinked. I was human, but I was also something more now. I was the voice of the snow, and I had a lot of stories to tell. 5 years have passed since I accepted the burden. 5 years of being the voice of the snow, the living connection between the forgotten dead and the world that moves on without them. I'm 47 now, and I did make chief, just like the snow sculpture predicted. But it's not the achievement I thought it would be. Every day, I carry the weight of thousands of deaths, thousands of stories that demand to be told. Let me tell you what it's actually like. Every winter, when the first snow falls, I feel them wake up. The voices start as whispers, then grow louder until I can distinguish individual stories, individual deaths. A child who fell through ice in 1887, a logger crushed by a tree in 1923, a hiker who took a wrong turn in 1998 and froze just yards from the trail. They don't just tell me how they died. They show me. I experience their final moments, the cold, the fear, the realization that help won't come in time. Some nights I wake up gasping, feeling like I'm drowning in a frozen lake or being buried by an avalanche. But I promised to be their voice, so I speak. I started a blog called Voices in the Snow. Every week during winter, I share a story. A name, a death, a life that mattered. I work with families when I can, helping them understand what happened to loved ones who disappeared in the mountains decades ago. Some stories make the news, most don't. But they're all preserved now, documented, remembered. That's what matters to the snow people. Not fame or recognition, just the simple acknowledgement that they existed. The task force was disbanded after my transformation. Too many uncomfortable questions, too much that couldn't be explained. Officially, the snow people are considered a mass hallucination caused by unusual weather patterns and carbon monoxide exposure. Nobody talks about them anymore. Except me, I'm the only one still speaking for them. It's lonely being the voice. People look at me strangely when I talk about the dead. My sister stopped inviting me to family gatherings because I make everyone uncomfortable. My fellow officers think I've developed some kind of PTSD. Only Dr. Vance still believes me, and she's too old to do much now beyond offer moral support. But I made a promise, and I keep my promises. On January 15th, 2020, everything changed again. I was on patrol near Franconia Notch when my radio crackled. All units, we have a report of a school bus sliding off Route 3. Multiple casualties. All available personnel respond. I arrived to find a nightmare. A bus carrying 23 middle school students had hit black ice and plunged into a ravine. The emergency response was immediate. Fire department, paramedics, other troopers. But the temperature was dropping, a blizzard was moving in, and the bus was half submerged in a frozen stream. I helped pull kids from the wreckage, getting them to waiting ambulances. We saved 19. 4 didn't make it. 2 girls and 2 boys, all 13 years old, all dying from exposure before we could get them out. I stayed at the scene after everyone else left, standing in the snow as the blizzard rolled in, and I felt them. The 4 children, newly dead, confused and afraid, not understanding what had happened. "It's okay," I said quietly. "I see you. I know your names. Sarah, Michael, Emma, David. You're not forgotten." They materialized in front of me, not as snow people yet, but as ghosts of themselves, transparent and frightened. "Are we dead?" Sarah asked, her voice small and scared. "Yes, I'm sorry, but you're not alone. And you're going to be remembered, I promise." "What happens now?" Michael asked. I wanted to tell them about heaven or peace or whatever comforting lie would help, but I'd learned from the snow people that the dead don't want lies. They want truth. "Now you become part of the mountain, part of the witness. Every winter, when the snow falls, you'll be able to manifest, to remind people that you lived, that you mattered, that your deaths weren't meaningless." "Will it hurt?" Emma asked. "No. You'll sleep most of the time. And when you wake, you'll have purpose. You'll help guide rescuers to other people in danger. You'll point the way to the lost and injured. You'll save lives by showing where you died." David looked at me with wise eyes that no 13-year-old should have. "You're one of them, aren't you? One of the snow people. But you're still alive. I'm the voice. I speak for those who can't speak for themselves." The 4 children looked at each other, some silent communication passing between them. Then Sarah spoke for all of them. "Will you tell our parents we love them? Will you make sure they know we weren't scared at the end?" My throat tightened. "Yes, I promise." They faded into the snow, joining the thousands of others. 4 more voices in my head, 4 more stories to tell. I kept my promise. I visited each family, told them what their children wanted them to know. Some believed me. Some thought I was cruel or crazy. But I had to try. That's what the voice does. The next winter, during the first big storm, 4 new snow people appeared near the accident site. Small figures, child-sized, standing watch over Route 3. Drivers reported seeing them and slowing down instinctively, being more careful on that dangerous stretch of road. In the year after their appearance, accidents on that curve dropped by 60%. The 4 children were saving lives by reminding drivers to be cautious. That's what the snow people do. They don't haunt. They protect, they warn, they guide. But there's a cost to all of this, and I'm starting to feel it. Last winter, I looked in the mirror and saw frost patterns on my skin that didn't fade. My hair is turning white prematurely, not gray, but actually white, like snow. My body temperature runs 2 degrees below normal. I get cold easily, need to wear extra layers even indoors. I'm changing, slowly becoming more like them, less like me. Dr. Vance says it's inevitable. You're carrying too much death, Catherine. The human mind wasn't meant to hold that much trauma. You're adapting by becoming less human, more like what you witness. Can it be stopped? Not without breaking your promise. You'd have to reject the voices, shut them out completely, and I don't think you can do that anymore. They're part of you now, she's right. I tried once, last spring, to ignore them. Took a vacation to Florida, tried to pretend I was normal. But even there I felt them. The dead of New Hampshire calling to me, needing me, demanding that I return and speak for them. I lasted 3 days before I came back. I've accepted my fate now. I'm not going to die at 72, surrounded by family. I'm going to die sooner, consumed by the cold I carry inside me. Maybe in 5 years, maybe in 10, but eventually the frost will spread too deep and I'll transform completely. When that happens, I'll become the thing I witnessed. A snow person myself, standing eternal watch over the mountains, pointing the way for future witnesses. But until then, I'll keep speaking, keep telling their stories, keep making sure no death is forgotten. Last week, I trained my replacement. Trooper Jennifer Reyes, 26 years old, sharp and observant. She's seen the snow people and believed. She's compassionate and strong and might be able to bear the weight when I can't anymore. I haven't told her what accepting the role really means. How it will consume her life, isolate her from normal human connections, slowly transform her into something other. That's a lesson she'll have to learn herself, if she chooses to accept when the offer comes. Tonight is December 21st, 2020, the winter solstice, 5 years since I accepted the burden. I'm standing on Mount Washington again, at the same spot where I made my choice. The snow people have gathered, thousands of them, all the witnesses I've been speaking for. The faceless figure approaches me, taller than ever, more refined. Catherine Walsh, 5 years as the voice. You have served well. We are grateful. I'm dying, aren't I? The cold is spreading. Soon I'll be more snow than human. Yes, that is the cost of bearing witness to so much death. But you knew this would happen. You accepted it when you accepted the role. I did. But I want to know, when I finally transform, when I become one of you completely, will I still be me? Will I remember being Catherine Walsh? Or will I just be another frozen witness? The figure is silent for a long moment. We do not lie to you. You will remember everything. Every moment of your human life. Every story you told. Every voice you carried. But you will also remember every death you witnessed for eternity. The question is not whether you remain yourself, but whether yourself can survive that weight. And if I can't, then you fracture. Your consciousness splinters across thousands of snow formations, each one carrying a fragment of who you were. You become many instead of one. It is the fate of most voices. Only the strongest remain whole. I look at the thousands of snow people surrounding me. How many of them were once like me? How many were voices who broke under the burden? Is there anyone who stayed whole? Anyone who transformed but kept their identity? One. The first voice from 1823. She stands on Mount Washington's summit, the oldest formation, the strongest witness. She has maintained her individuality for 200 years. You could visit her, speak with her, learn how she survived. I make the climb immediately, leaving the gathering and ascending to the summit. In the darkness, with temperatures well below zero, I find her. She's the oldest snow person I've ever seen, wearing a colonial-era dress, her face carved with such detail I can see individual eyelashes. She opens her eyes as I approach, and they're not hollow like the others. They're blue, like ice, but aware. "You're the current voice," she says in a voice like wind through pines. "Catherine Walsh. And you?" "Abigail Stone. I was the first. I accepted the burden in 1823 after my husband and 3 children died in a blizzard on this mountain. I was so consumed with grief that when the dead offered me purpose, I accepted without thinking." "How did you stay whole?" The others said most voices fracture. "By remembering who I was before I became this. By holding on to my name, my memories, my identity, even as I took on thousands of other stories. You must build a core of self that cannot be eroded by others' deaths. Hold on to something, a memory, a person, a purpose that reminds you who Catherine Walsh is, separate from the voice. What did you hold on to? My children's laughter. In my darkest moments, when the weight of death threatens to crush me, I remember the sound of my babies laughing. It grounds me, reminds me I was once human, once happy, once alive. I think about what grounds me. My sister, probably. The last connection to my family, to my past before all of this. I need to repair that relationship before it's too late. Thank you, Abigail. Survive, Catherine Walsh. Survive and remain yourself. We need voices who remember being human. Without that connection, we become just monuments to death instead of bridges between the living and the dead. I leave the summit with new determination. I won't fracture. I won't lose myself. I'll be like Abigail, eternal but whole, changed but still me. The next day, I drive to my sister's house. She's reluctant to let me in, but I insist. I need to tell you something. And I need you to remember it, because soon I'm going to change. And when I do, I'll need you to remind me who I was. Kate, you're scaring me. I know. But please, just listen. I tell her everything. The snow people, the voice, the transformation that's coming. I show her the frost patterns on my skin, the white hair, the blue tint to my eyes. I share the stories of the dead I carry. She listens, and I can see her struggling between disbelief and the evidence right in front of her. Even if this is true, she says finally, even if you really are turning into some kind of snow ghost, what can I do about it? Remember me. Remember Catherine Walsh, your sister, the girl who was afraid of thunderstorms and loved strawberry ice cream and wanted to be a dancer before she became a cop. When I come to you as snow, when I'm more dead than alive, remind me of those things. Help me stay whole. She's crying now. I don't want to lose you. You won't. I'll just be different. But I'll still be me if you help me remember. She hugs me, and I feel her warmth against my cold skin. This is what I'll hold on to. This connection, this love, this proof that I was human once. That night, I sleep better than I have in years. The winter ends. Spring comes and the voices quiet. I have a few months of relative peace before they wake again. I use that time to prepare. I document everything, write down my memories, create anchors to my identity. When the transformation comes, I'll be ready. It's now November 2021. I'm 48 years old, and I know this will be my last winter as primarily human. I can feel it in my bones, in the spreading cold that no amount of heat can touch. The first snow fell yesterday, and the voices woke up stronger than ever. 10,000 deaths, 10,000 stories, all demanding to be told. But I'm ready. I know who I am. Catherine Walsh, voice of the snow, bridge between the living and the dead, eternal witness. And when the time comes, when I finally transform completely, I won't fracture. I'll remain whole, like Abigail before me. I'll stand watch over these mountains, telling stories, guiding rescuers, speaking for those who cannot speak. Forever. That's my choice. That's my purpose. That's my fate. I'm the voice of the snow, and I will never stop speaking.